Welcome to Fusion Grain Cooking. We have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about farro. We're going to be doing the fabulous farro chewy bread, a wonderful farro risotto, and we're going to do a grilled vegetable farro salad and finish it off with a fabulous farro torte baked in the oven. Don't go away. You're going to love today's show. Welcome to Fusion Grain Cooking, where we take the foods you eat every day and fuse them with grains to make foods that are not only healthy for you, but taste great. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite grains, farro. It comes out of Italy. It's a fabulous grain, not related to wheat at all. In fact, it's just its own grain in its own right. Farro has been grown for centuries in Italy, especially in the Tuscan area. It's been a mainstay for a long, long time. They use a lot for pasta making in Italy, but it can be used in many, many things. I love to add it to salads and breads and all kinds of cooking. It's extremely high in vitamin E, which makes it high in antioxidants, which makes it wonderful for health. It's very high in fiber and also high in A, B, and C vitamins. It's just an incredibly nutritious grain, and it also tastes great. You're going to love what we do with farro. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to bake a bread today. Breads, I absolutely love making homemade breads, and farro is a fabulous addition to bread. Now, before I add it to my bread, though, I cook it. And farro cooks a little bit, it's kind of like between brown rice and white rice. It's going to cook about 16 minutes on the stovetop, about 8 minutes in a pressure cooker. So I have my farro already cooked up and ready to go here. It's great. It's a wonderful chewy grain, and by the time it goes through the whole process of kneading the bread, you're really not going to be able to tell it's in the bread, but you're going to have a wonderful chewy quality to the bread that you can't get any other way. So to get started, we have some hot water here, and we're going to add almost 2 cups of hot water. Okay, and then to that we have some butter we're going to put in there. And the water's warm enough to melt the butter. We have some powdered potato flour, which is great, some sugar, and our farro. Dump that in there. And then we're going to add just a couple cups of flour. And remember, we really like, if we're doing a white flour, we use that wonderful bromine-free flour, unbrominated flour. Okay, and then we're going to put our yeast, a little bit of salt in there, and then we're going to put our yeast on top of the flour. Remember, we talk about the Chef Brad method of making bread. This is my method. I put everything in, half of the flour the recipe calls for, and then I put the yeast on the top. The reason I put the yeast in last, and it's an instant yeast, the reason I put the yeast in last is because if my water is too hot, I don't want to kill the yeast. And I have never, ever, ever ruined a batch of bread doing this method. So we put our yeast on the top. Now we're going to turn our mixer on, and we're going to watch and see what it looks like, and then we're going to start adding flour until it cleans the sides of the bowl. It doesn't matter what the recipe tells you, let your mixer tell you when to quit adding the flour. So now we're going to add just a little bit more flour here, and we're going to let that knead for 6 minutes. 6 minutes kneading is equivalent of letting it rise twice. We're going to take the bread out of the mixer. And to do that, I'm always going to put a little bit of oil on the counter first and rub that in. The reason is it oils my hands, so it's easier to get out of the bowl. And if you use flour, the more flour you add to the bread, the stiffer your bread will be. So we have our oil on the counter, and we're just going to take our dough and remove it from the bowl. And it's beautiful. That dough just has a beautiful texture to it. We're just going to put a little bit of that oil on it, and look at that. It's beautiful. And look at those beautiful farro grains in there. And you think the grains are so huge they're going to be crunchy when you eat it? No, they're going to be chewy and have wonderful texture. So we're just going to divide this up. It looks about just the right amount we need. And I have a couple pans right here. I'm going to spray the pans a little bit of nonstick spray, and we're going to form a couple loaves here. And we're going to put this in the pan and let it proof, and then we're going to bake it in the oven. So there we go. Oh, that's just beautiful. That farro grain is a fabulous addition to baked breads. Remember, you have to cook the grain first, or it would be like little rocks biting on, and that's not very pleasant when you're eating bread. There we go. We're going to let this proof. While we're letting this proof, we're going to bake a wonderful farro torte that we're going to bake in the oven. Farro is extremely popular in Italy. They use it all over Italy, and they make a lot of pasta with it, but they also make these kind of dishes with it too. So we have our farro here that's been cooked. Remember, we told you earlier how to cook it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to crack some eggs. And these are some wonderful organic eggs, and it sure is amazing the difference in the shells when you buy a nice organic egg compared to the ones that aren't. The shells are just like paper, and these are just kind of almost hard to crack. We're going to whisk our eggs, and then to that we're going to add a little bit of garlic, some salt, some fresh ground pepper, and then we have some ricotta cheese here. We're going to put the ricotta cheese in there and kind of mix that up. And then we're going to add these wonderful cooked farro grains. And this is going to give this torte a wonderful chewy texture. Oh, that just looks beautiful. And then to that, we're going to add some golden raisins, which are fabulous, some pine nuts, and some fresh chopped parsley. And of course, on top of that fresh chopped parsley, we want to put in a little bit of fresh ground nutmeg. This is a little whole nutmeg, and it's just fabulous, the flavor you get when you use a whole nutmeg versus the stuff you buy in a bottle. It may have been in the bottle for quite a long time. We're going to grind this on there, about half a nutmeg. And nutmeg and ricotta cheese were made for each other. Oh, it smells wonderful. Okay, we're going to take that and we're just going to mix all this together. Beautiful. Now we have a pan right here, and we're going to take our pan and we have some melted butter. We're going to pour the melted butter in the pan, and we're going to coat the whole pan with the melted butter. And that extra butter we're just going to pour right in there. We don't want to waste the butter. And then we're going to take some breadcrumbs and just sprinkle breadcrumbs all over the bottom of this. And just kind of spread those out a little bit along the bottom. There we go. And then we're going to take this, mix that butter up in there, and we're going to pour this in the pan. And when this bakes in the oven, the eggs are going to puff it up, and it's just going to be wonderful. Now we're going to bake this in one of my favorite ovens in the world. This is a steam and convection oven. There's a lot of steam ovens on the market, but this is the only oven that combines steam and convection. The beauty of that is you get the steam to make up nice and light, but you get the convection to brown it. So is what we want to have happen here. We want this torte to rise up because of the egg, and we want it to brown with the convection. So the steam and convection is going to do that. And it's very simple. We're just going to slide this in the oven, close the door, and I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to choose my steam convection mode, 30 minutes, and my oven temperature about 345 degrees, and push start. That's all I have to do. It's going to beep in 30 minutes when it's done, and it's going to be perfection coming out of this oven. And when we come back, we're going to be making a fabulous farro risotto. Welcome back. We're going to make that fabulous risotto with the farro. The first thing we're going to do, we have our nice big pan here. We're going to turn on our induction cooktop on high, and we're going to put a little bit of oil in, a little bit of butter, Now, you know, a lot of people are intimidated by risotto because it takes so long to cook. Don't let that keep you from making risotto. It's definitely worth the effort. So to this, we're going to add some onions. And we're going to want to saute these onions a couple minutes so that they can caramelize just a little bit. So we have the onions here in our induction, and did you see how quickly that heated up? That's what's so great about induction. You turn it on, and immediately it's hot. The onions are perfect. They've been sauteing about 2 to 3 minutes now. Now we're going to add a little bit of cherry vinegar to that, and we're just going to cook that until it cooks off for just another minute. And that just gives that risotto that wonderful signature flavor that you get. And you can see how that's just cooking off very quickly. With a nice big pan like this, you have a lot of hot surface, so it's going to cook off very quickly. Now, we're going to add our farro to make the risotto. And we're just going to kind of stir this up and heat it up in here. And it's a process of adding liquid and stirring. Now, let me explain about the farro. We've actually soaked it for about 2 to 3 hours in water to plump it up just a little bit, because it is a harder grain than like an arboreal rice, which doesn't need that kind of time. But with this, because it's a complete whole grain, we had to soak it for just a few hours actually. Okay, here we go. Now to this, we're going to add a ladle at a time, a stock. And you can use chicken or vegetable stock, whichever you would like. And we're going to do like a ladle of that. We're going to cook that in and just stir. And you're going to stir until that's cooked up and dry. And then you're going to continue the process until we've used up almost all of our stock. Oh, that's just beautiful. And it's going to have a nice creamy flavor when we're done, and texture. There we go, that's beautiful. And our stock is hot. It's important to use a hot stock because you don't want to cool your pan down too much. And this is a process, we're going to do this 4 or 5 more times until it's soaked up all of the juice, and that's what causes it to be creamy and nice. Halfway through, we added mushrooms to that, and you can see the mushrooms are cooked beautifully. And we just took the baby bell portobello mushrooms and sliced them and put them in there halfway through. So they had a chance to cook down. Now we're down to adding the last little bit of our stock to this. And you can see how creamy and beautiful it's gotten. It's absolutely beautiful. When you're cooking this dish like a risotto with an arboreal rice, it's going to be a lot different when you're doing it with the farro. Farro is a whole grain. The texture is going to remain a little bit chewy, which is good. It's still going to have that fabulous risotto flavor, and look how creamy and wonderful it is, but it is going to have just a little bit more texture than the arboreal rice would have. But I am all for having that texture and the fiber and the nutrition that you're going to have out of this traditional dish done with the whole grain. And now we're almost to the point where we're going to add our cheese and a little bit of cream just to pull it all together and make it beautiful. So before we do that, let's add a little bit of salt. And always taste it, because depending on your stock, because sometimes those stocks can be really salty, so always taste it before you salt it. And I did taste it, so I know that it needed a little bit of salt. So we're going to stir that up, and look how creamy. It's just absolutely a beautiful risotto. Okay, we're going to add about a half a cup of heavy cream to that. And that's just going to finish it off and pull it all together beautifully and lighten up the color a little bit. Just beautiful. And then we have about a cup of fresh grated Parmesan Romano cheese. And we're going to stir that in there, and that's what gives it even a little bit more creamy texture. Oh, look at that. This is absolutely, oh my goodness, smells heavenly, and it's going to taste the same. I'm certain of that. Now it's time for the Chef Brad tip of the day. For today's tip, I want to talk about fiber for just a moment. One of the things I love about cooking with grains is they're so high in fiber. And you know, Americans really get minimal fiber in their diet. Fiber is so important to our diet. A diet high in fiber can actually increase our nutrition in leaps and bounds. People that eat diets high in fiber have lower cholesterol. It's great for maintaining your weight or for weight loss. Everything that we're struggling with in today's health issues, most of them have to do with low fiber in our diet. Most Americans get an average of 4 grams of fiber a day, and we really need, for optimal health, 50 or more grams of fiber a day. So that's what I love about cooking with grains. It's an easy way to get that much needed fiber back into our diets, and it tastes great. For our salad today, we're going to grill some vegetables first, and I have some yellow squash and zucchini that have been lightly seasoned with a little bit of olive oil on them. We're just going to place them right on the grill. And there's nothing like having a grill right in the house. It's great for grilling vegetables or just anything you want to grill indoors. So we're going to put these vegetables on here, and you want to be patient, leave them for just a couple minutes. It's not going to take very long. The grilling, as the oils and the flavors drop down on the grill and burn on there, it puts flavor back into the vegetable. That's why grilling is so great. Especially in the house when you think, if you have charcoal, you get the flavor. When you're grilling in the house, the way you get the flavor is by having a grill that's hot enough that it allows those things to drop down on there. And you can hear it kind of sizzling now. They're sizzling. As the moisture drops in there, it's going to steam back up, and that's what's going to flavor these vegetables. And you're going to think that they were grilled outside, because the flavor is just going to be fabulous. And when looking for an indoor grill, I would make sure you buy something that's easy to clean and that can be removed easily and taken over and cleaned. It'll just take a moment. We'll have beautiful grill marks on it. That's the other thing about this. You want to get those beautiful grill marks on your vegetables. It looks like you really put a lot of extra effort into cooking the meal. Our vegetables are grilled perfectly. Look at them. They're absolutely beautiful. So we're going to go ahead and remove them from the grill, and then we're going to take them over and chop them up, and they're going to add the most wonderful quality to the salad that we're doing with the farro and a few other surprises we'll show you in just a moment. Be careful what you hear about carbs out there. There's a lot of controversy out there, a lot of diets that come out, and a lot of people telling you to avoid carbs. Carbs cause weight gain. So I just want to clarify something. There's 2 types of carbs. There's a simple carb and there's a complex carb. The simple carbs are the things you really should avoid. They're all that processed food, white flour, white sugar, all that stuff. Those should be eaten sparingly. The complex carbs, fruits and vegetables and whole grains, you don't have to avoid those. Those are the things that bring maximum nutrition and fiber to our bodies. We are stewards of our body, and we need to make sure that we're wise about the things that we take in our body. And one of the best ways is to just stick to the complex carbs, eat the simple carbs at a minimum, and that way our bodies can be as healthy as they can possibly be. The bread is out of the oven, and it looks fabulous. The torte cooked beautifully in the steam convection oven, and we have our risotto that is absolutely beautiful. Now we're going to pull everything together with a fabulous salad. I just want to make a mention, though, when you're cooking some of these dishes like the torte and the salad and the bread, that you could really use other grains. We're using farro tonight, but these things you could use other grains. With the risotto, I'm sorry, you're going to have to use either arborio rice or farro, but with the other things you could change out the grains. Now we're going to throw together this fabulous salad. We have some roasted corn here, and this is really easy to roast. You just toss it in a little bit of oil and put it in the oven until it starts to turn a nice golden brown. And then we're just going to cut it off of the cob, and it's going to add a wonderful sweet texture to our salad. I love using roasted corns. They're absolutely wonderful and so easy to do. And pretty much you can find corn pretty much all year round these days. We're just cutting that off, and when it turns brown like that, is what it's actually doing is caramelizing the sugars in there, which gives it that wonderful flavor. And we have these beautiful Peruvian potatoes that I steamed in the steam convection oven to perfection. It took about 8 to 10 minutes to steam them, and they're tender and lovely. And we're going to add these whole to the salad. And they're so small, you can really leave them whole, and it's just going to add to that whole texture, wonderful thing of the whole salad. So we're going to dump these in the bowl, and then we're going to take our corn that we've taken off the cob, and we're going to toss that in there. So we have corn, Peruvian potatoes, we have some wonderful artichokes here, that we're going to add. Beautiful. And we can't forget these fabulous grilled vegetables that we grilled on the grill. We're just going to chop them, and not very small pieces. I'm just going to chop them in kind of big chunks because we have the big potatoes in there, and we really don't want them to be really small. And then we're going to put those in there. Oh, and they smell wonderful. And we have our farro that's been cooked. And we're going to toss our farro in there. And we're just going to toss all this together and see what a beautiful salad we have here. Isn't that just, it's just lovely. Kind of an earthy salad with the artichokes and the roasted vegetables and those beautiful Peruvian potatoes in there. Now for our salad dressing, I like simple dressings, oils and vinegars and a little bit of herbs. And I have right here some oregano, rosemary, and fennel. And we're going to toss this on there. And I put the whole fennel in there. Every now and then you're just going to get one of those whole fennel seeds and a bite, and your mouth is going to explode with flavor. And for the dressing, we're just going to put on some oil and vinegar. I have an 18-year-old traditional balsamic vinegar that we're going to put on here. And if you have a good vinegar and a good oil, you really don't have to worry about too much more. It's when we use cheap oils and cheap vinegars that our salads lack in flavors. So we have our vinegar, and we're going to put some olive oil on there, a little bit of salt and pepper, and toss it up, and we're going to have just an absolutely wonderful salad. Toss this up. Oh, those potatoes are so pretty in there. I love pretty food. You know, I mentioned it before, but you know what? Our first impression affects how the food is going to taste too. If the food really looks pretty, it's going to really affect how it tastes too. There's our salad. We're going to take our salad and we're just going to put it in this lovely dish here. Spoon that out in there. Oh my goodness. When you taste this, you're going to be so glad you were watching Fusion Grain Cooking tonight. Isn't that beautiful? Beautiful meal. I'm just anxious to cut into this torte here. And let's see how that is. Here we go. We're going to take out a little piece of that. Oh my goodness, it cooked up beautifully. Look at how that cooked up. You can see the farro in there, the cheese. Absolutely beautiful. I'm just going to cut a little taste off of it. I've just been dying to taste this to see how wonderful it is. Oh my goodness. The first thing I tasted when I put that in my mouth is just a hint of nutmeg, and then I bit into a plump golden raisin and a nut. Absolutely delicious. You're going to love that. And we have our salad here. Oh, I might have to have another bite of that torte. Absolutely delicious. Our risotto is creamy and wonderful. Risotto's never been better. Farro takes it to a whole new level. And last but not least, I have to try this absolutely fabulous salad. It just looks so beautiful with the artichokes in there, and I'm going to make sure I get one of those little Peruvian potatoes. Wonderful. In fact, I don't know any words in the English vocabulary to describe that salad. It is absolutely delicious. Our bread over here, you're going to love the bread. The farro gives it just a beautiful, chewy texture in there. And you really don't know that the farro was there. It's just the bread has a wonderful, chewy texture to it. I hope you have really enjoyed this show on farro. Isn't it a fabulous grain? Remember, it's high in fiber, high in antioxidants. It's just a fabulous grain to add to your pantry of grains. Thank you for tuning in to Fusion Grain Cooking. We'll see you next time.